Players shake hands. Let's see what Ding opens his game with. In the previous game, he did play the London system, which worked out pretty interestingly. But today, he opens with the English opening, 1c4. It's interesting how Ding has played a different first move in every game. e4, knight f3, d4, and now c4. e5 by Gukesh. The classical response to the English. Ding Liren takes off his jacket, places it behind the chair, and let's see what he plays here. He puts his knight out to c3. And Ding's point is that I want to play my knight out to f3, g3, but Gukesh already taking the battle to his opponent, bishop b4. Generally, you want to take this knight and double your opponent's pawns, which is kind of fine, but Ding jumps in with the knight and attacks the bishop here. The bishop comes back to e7. You can take the bishop here, but after queen takes e7, followed by knight f6, knight c6, black has an okay position. So knight f3 was played, and Gukesh now plays pawn to d6, g3. If you look at the times on the clock, Ding has spent 5 minutes here, while Gukesh has spent hardly 30 seconds. c6 played. Now you can come back to c3, or you can take on e7. He decides to take on e7 here. And Gukesh instantly recaptures back with the knight. There has been a game that is played before, Jahangir Wakido versus Fabiano Caruana. And f6 played here. This is the first new move. In that game, I think black had castled. f6 is a very interesting move here by Gukesh. He's just bolstering the center and maybe wants to go d5 at the later point. Bishop e6 attacks the pawn on c4. b3 played, defending the pawn very solidly. Pawn to d5 played here by black, just breaking in the center. And now bishop comes out to a3, a very, very good move by Ding Liren. The bishop is actively placed on this diagonal and is putting pressure. Black quickly castles here, although this pin is a bit irritating. One thing to notice was if you tried to go after the pawn here, that would have been quite bad because after d4 white was better. So rook c1 played here by Ding, now defending the pawn. And a5 by Gukesh, just like the first move that was played by the guest. He wants to maybe put pressure here, but also get knight a6 to b4. Knight comes to e1, freeing up the f pawn to move ahead. Also, the knight can come into the game. Rook e8 by Gukesh, just coming out of the pin, and maybe the knight can move later on. And Ding does go for f4. Now it's not so clear whether Gukesh should push the pawn forward or should take here. He decides to capture on f4. And now rook takes f4 is the best move. Activating the rook, he's played it. Time-wise, Gukesh is 26 minutes ahead on the clock. He takes d takes c4. If you play rook e4, trying to attack the bishop, maybe the bishop just drops back. So Ding takes on c4. And now Gukesh can move his knight. He plays it, attacks the rook here on f4. The rook is quickly moved to the center of the board. A little bit weird place, because f5, rook e3, f4 can be played here. But he went knight to a6. Interesting move. And now knight to c2 played. Stopping maybe knight b4, also controlling the d4 square so that the rook can move here. Knight e5 is possible. He goes queen to c7. The queen is a little bit awkwardly placed, but it's a normal move. The knight comes in and attacks the bishop. You want to save the bishop. Bishop f7 is the best move here. It's a weird position where white hasn't moved any of his e or d pawn for 18 moves. That hardly ever happens. Finally, Ding pushes his d pawn forward to d3. And let's see what Gukesh comes up with. He plays his knight to e5, keeping the position complex. He wants to go bishop g6 and attack the rook in the center of the board. Knight comes back to f3. And you can actually play your bishop here. It seems like a great move, and black should have a good position. But instead, Gukesh goes back to d7. A little bit weird, but I believe Gukesh wants the c5 square for his knights. So rook takes rook. Rook takes rook. Putting pressure down the e file. And now maybe bishop b2, looking at the long diagonal, makes a lot of sense. For now, Gukesh has 26 minutes more on the clock. And Ding now makes a mistake. He goes rook b1. And this actually allows black a very strong move. Black to move. What is the powerful move here that Gukesh can play? It's actually not so easy. Gukesh takes his time and finds it. b5. The point is, you're going b4. You're attacking this pawn. And when white takes it like now, you don't take it back because that would just drop the pawn. But instead first give a check and then take it back. Gukesh gives the check. Black's position looks very, very dangerous. White's position looks dangerous. Black looks great. C takes b5, taken. So these two are very, very strong pawns. A2 pawn is a bit weak. It feels like Gukesh once again has managed to outwit Ding Liren. Bishop b2 played. While this is an interesting move, objectively it is a losing move here. Gukesh can snatch a pawn. By the way, Gukesh has 50 minutes on the clock. Ding Liren has just 15 minutes. Gukesh takes the pawn after 3 minutes of thought. And now a very important move, bishop d4. Because if you move your queen away from here, there is rook a1 attacking a5 pawn. So very important to block with the knight, but this is not the right knight. The right one is this knight, because when the bishop goes back and the rook goes here and white tries to attack this pinned piece, it would actually help black that the rook is protected on c8. It's a very deep move. Knight a c5 is actually a move that anyone would play here because you're getting your knight from the side of the board into the game. And after rook c1, the c5 knight is attacked. Bishop b3 played by Gukesh. If queen d2 here, black is just better after b4. But Ding finds an amazing move, queen e1. And the point why it's amazing is because from e1 it can go to f2 to even put further pressure here. So the bishop drops back to e6, but already the advantage has shifted hands. It's now Ding who's better clearly here. Queen f2 and rook comes and defends here. It's kind of a weird thing that Ding is better in such a position where he's two pawns, these two pawns look so strong. But the point now is that you want to go d4 and win this rook. So rook c7 makes a lot of sense. And d4, if the knight moves, it attacks the queen. So first the knight moves away. A stronger move would have been knight e1, threatening d4. When the knight moves, there's d5. The rook takes rook, doesn't come with a check. So it was a deep move. But knight d4, he goes bishop f7. And now Ding Liren finds the best move, knight c6. Already white is considerably better here. But if you think from the perspective of an engine, this position looks great for white. But from a human perspective, Gukesh would be thinking that, hey, I am exchanged down, but I have two passers here. Also, the white king does look a bit unsafe, so I should be fine. And that is why he plays this move very calmly, h6. He can place his king on h7 later, and the bishop can come to g6. So king e1 played here by uh, Ding, d4, and now you continue with d2 when there is no check in the position. Queen comes up to d4. We are on move number 36. Both players under 10 minutes on the clock. Knight e5 played here. If you get a bit greedy to win a pawn like this, then knight d3 followed by queen h1 takes. It's a very risky position. So Ding rightly goes king d2. Queen comes to g2, threatening a massive fork here with a check. He comes back queen f2. And the queen comes back to d5. And now white still is better. Bishop d4. But Ding is like, I think I have had enough. Let me draw the game. Also, I have a decent position. We are coming closer to move 40. A repetition is imminent. Queen f2. Will Gukesh agree to a draw? He comes back to d5. And now Ding, with the final repetition here, is going to play. By the way, 30 moves have been added on the clock. And Gukesh writes down the score sheet. Queen d4, offering a trade of queens. Now, Gukesh has 30 minutes to think whether to accept it with queen g2 or... Oh, he doesn't go for the repetition. He wants to play on. This is the second time in the match that Gukesh has done this. In the previous game as well, in a position that was slightly worse. He did it. He does that again. I think one of the main reasons for Gukesh to do this is because he realizes that Ding is not fighting too hard. Whenever the position gets intense, Ding's first thing is to simplify the game and head towards a draw. And that is giving Gukesh extra energy to fight, to want to win, even from sometimes positions that are not that favorable. King h7. Queen takes pawn. And now, although the pawns have also been equalized, the thing that has happened here is that this pawn is pretty strong and now the kingside pawns are a bit weak. Let's see what he does. He does queen d5. The idea being b2, shift the rook over, and then knight c4 check, winning the queen. So queen comes back to b4, threatening a check to trade the queens. He goes queen g2. Well, he could actually have gone bishop g6 here and kept the game going perhaps. But queen g2 is a slightly draw offer here. Queen e4 check. Queen takes e4. D takes e4. He goes b2. Rook b1. And now the game is drawn because Gukesh has this very important move. If it were not for this move, he would have lost. Bishop a2. He takes, rook takes pawn. And now after knight c4, king comes up. Knight takes b2 and the players agree to a draw because it's an opposite colored bishop position and it would have ended in a draw. What a fight this was.